Hello, hello. So these next two recordings and calls are going to be asynchronous. The end of September was the previous call that we did on the sleep study or sleep cycle series. And then I'm going to continue going through that, break up in two more calls. And then on Monday night, this coming Monday, let's check the calendar. 20th of October will be a live call going over peptides. And then, of course, if there's anything else going on, I'd love to talk about that with you. So, tis the season. Got water here, a little bit of a scratchy throat. And if I need to do that, I will drink water and then we'll just keep going. But this second week, we're going to be going over the sleep stages and sleep cycles. So, when we talk about sleep, very often it is not broken down into what's happening so we can understand what's going on, what the troubleshooting means, and then how to impact that. And again, if any of this topic is bringing up any anxiety for you because you've struggled with sleep for a while and you're trying to get it better, but you don't know what to do, and just talking about it's really stressful, or listening about it, I'd love to take a moment, help you break that down. We can go through it together and find some actionable things that can reduce that stress for you. And so if you're feeling that way, push pause on this. Let's talk and let's find a way to have this conversation better that would suit your needs better. So the sleep cycle. Often we hear we need to sleep 7+, 8+ hours a night. We hear that women need more sleep than men. We hear that caffeine disrupts sleep, alcohol disrupts sleep, a late meal disrupts sleep. We know that sleep's important. We know that if we don't get enough sleep, it impacts our memory. Maybe you've heard that sleep impacts fat loss, but that's kind of all that we hear. And yes, we're going all over those topics, but it's all we hear, and we don't understand the why, what for, how to adjust it, how to make it better. And so that's what I'm going to do today. So there's the sleep architecture. And when we're talking about sleep, where there's different stages, there's 3 full stages, and then there's the REM sleep. So depending on where you read it, it's listed as 3 stages in REM or it's listed as 4 stages. But overall, our body goes through a 90-minute sleep cycle. And the importance of that 90-minute cycle is to help you backwards plan from wake time to going to bed, knowing what you want for your body, and knowing that every 90 minutes or so, our bodies come into a light sleep stage. And when we're in that light sleep stage, sometimes we could wake up and sometimes we could be not awake, but aware of our surroundings. And we think that means that we're not getting good sleep. And that's the opposite. So if you're feeling stressed because you're like, I know I wake up in the night, I'm not getting any sleep. Our bodies are supposed to wake up, so that's okay. But different wake times, waking up with anxiety, waking up with stress, racing heart rate, poor dreams, those are all different things. But I want you to know that our bodies come to a wakefulness multiple times in the night. That's good. It's not necessarily bad in any way. And so we understand those stages. It helps us know what's going on, how to troubleshoot. Because, like everything else that I approach, I want you to understand what your body is doing, why it's doing what it's doing, and then we can also know how to adjust whatever is happening in your life to be able to fit a better way for you. So everybody's different. Every protocol can be different because everyone's needs might be different. But yeah, that's just the encouragement. So there's 4 stages. It goes through a 90-minute cycle. So if you're backward plan on 90 minutes, not solid hour marks. And then there is the first stage. So the first stage is your light sleep. That's the transition from wakefulness, obviously, to sleep. Your muscles relax, your breathing slows down. You might be aware of what's going on around you. That's kind of the light sleep. Stage 2 is in the light sleep as well, which is why sometimes you see it different in how it's broken down in stages. But the big part of this is your body temperature drops and your heart rate slows. And this starts the decluttering for your brain. And then this stage makes up 50% of total sleep over the whole night or your whole 24-hour period. Some people don't sleep just at night. Some people need some naps. So that light sleep is part of that. And then we can talk about different ways to help you get from that transition into that light sleep later. And then deep sleep or slow wave sleep, it's written two different ways. Same thing. It's the physical restoration. You get tissue repair, you get immune regulation, growth hormone release happens. It's a really powerful part of your sleep. And it, interestingly enough, is more, it happens more often in a certain period of the night. And we'll go through that as I'll break that down as we go further. And then there is the REM sleep. Same thing. It happens in a larger ratio. I think that's a better word. Larger ratio. Deep sleep, a larger ratio, one part of the night. REM sleep, a larger ratio, the other part of the night. And no matter what, every 90-minute cycle, your body still goes through all those phases. Or it should. It should go through those phases. So this REM sleep is active brain state. It's where dreaming occurs, memory and emotional processing takes place, creativity improves. This is a really powerful part of our sleep. And if you're someone who has lots of dreams and you dream all the time, you probably have a pretty active REM sleep cycle. If you don't, then it's often you're not having an active REM sleep cycle. And then just the big takeaway from this little part of it is you cycle through all 4 stages multiple times in the night. And so every 90 minutes, you're going through all 4 of those stages. And then this is a really cool part. Your early cycles have more deep sleep in that 90-minute. So when you're looking at 90 minutes, a larger portion of that time is deep sleep. In the first half of the night, that's hours before midnight. And then in the hours after midnight, when you're going through that 90-minute cycle, that is when your body is having a higher ratio of REM sleep in every 90-minute cycle. And then both are really important. We need both to happen. That's also a really cool reason why our body goes through all those stages cyclically throughout the night. So if you are getting a large amount of sleep after midnight, you're not getting as much of deep sleep as you truly need, but you're still getting some. And that's really important to remember as you're starting to address your sleep cycle and you're starting to look at what's happening in your body. I don't want this to be a anxiety or fear inducing thing. I really want to help you understand that our body goes through these cycles. It happens in early evening and in late evening where there's ways to optimize it. But starting from a place of curiosity and interest as opposed to fear and anxiety is a great way to help. Even just those thought processes and mental focus is still a great way to, very first step, address how you sleep, address your mindset. May I have some water, please? So again, for the each stages 1 and 2, that's transition, that's light rest. Our brains do some cleanup. We prepare for deeper sleep. Stage 3 is that big physical repair, growth hormone, immune health, recovery, fat loss, all the things. And then REM is that mental and emotional repair. And memory, it's, memory, learning, creativity, hormone regulation. It's all really important. Each phase has its value, and just understanding what's happening in each phase is really great. And then we talked about growth hormone, or I just said it real quick. Deep sleep was when our body releases growth hormone and repairs tissue. And when you're looking at women's health, perimenopause, thyroid health, and all of those impact how we're losing weight and what's happening at a very, the deepest level of what's happening. Growth hormone is really important, and repairing our body is also very important too. And so when we're looking at not getting deep sleep, if we're not prioritizing more hours of restful sleeping time before midnight, that can lead to some of the hormone imbalance and thyroid issues and inflammation. And so when we're looking at how to improve that, and you're having issues with perimenopause, your thyroid, chronic inflammation, starting to address your early evening sleep schedule and attempts to go to sleep is a really great way to start that. And I'll map that out later. We can come back. So what disrupts our sleep cycles? We talked about caffeine, very annoying. It does disrupt sleep cycles. There are ways to improve that. You can go back to the last video. We don't need to go in detail of all of that right now. But what happens with caffeine and alcohol is it suppresses our deep and REM sleep. And so even if we fall asleep faster, like a lot of people will drink alcohol in the evening, kind of a stress relief. They say it helps them go to sleep, and it's true. It is a depressant. It helps start that process, but it disrupts the critical components of our sleep cycle, and that is the deep sleep and the REM sleep cycles. And so even though you're getting to sleep quickly, you're still having trash sleep. And if anybody has an Oura ring, your Oura ring will tell you very quickly when you wake up that you either had a late night meal or you had some alcohol, and it says, hey, what happened? Your sleep was garbage. And it doesn't say garbage, but that's how I translate it. And then we've heard a lot blue light and screens that impacts what's happening. What that does is it delays our melatonin release. And so it shifts your entire sleep cycle to later. So if you are doing screens up until the moment that you go to sleep and you're having a hard time falling asleep, that's why. And again, doesn't need to be a anxiety or fear. You're just understanding what's happening in your body and what those hormones are doing. When we understand what's happening, it's so much easier to make adjustments on, oh, okay, that makes sense. Let's have some space between screen time and bedtime. And then for stress, so stress, of course, keeps cortisol high and it makes it harder to get into your deep sleep. And then late meals or blood sugar crashes. So if you're having a super sugary snack before bed or you're having a late meal, that's the same thing with caffeine and alcohol. Not that it helps you go to sleep faster, but it triggers that night wake and interrupts those cycles. So both of them, when you're looking at data from a wearable of some kind, that's what you're seeing. So that's the body temperature, heart rate. Some of them will do VO2 max or not VO2 max, HRV. And when you're looking at the changes in that on graphs, those, the caffeine or alcohol, late meals or blood sugar crashes, those will all show some of the similar physiological changes that are happening. And then inconsistent bedtimes. This confuses your circadian rhythm, so your body can't predict when to enter deep or REM stages. And when you're having an inconsistent bedtime, often there's an inconsistent wake time, or you get overtired and you kind of hit a second wind. So there's a couple things that could happen, but our bodies are very rhythmic. Men are more that 24-hour, women are more 24-hour and 28, 35, whatever, cyclical with their hormone changes throughout their cycle. So there's two outside pressures kind of impacting what's going on in our brains and our bodies for women when we're sleeping. And the circadian rhythm is a great way to help support those changes that happen over the course of the month with our other hormones. And having an inconsistent bedtime, that impacts what's happening with your hormones, what your body's doing with sending those signals, and it can confuse it. And then I always have to put a blood sugar little plug in here because it is one of the most impactful things we can do for our health, longevity, and fat loss is having very healthy blood sugar insulin management. So when you're waking up between that 2 to 3 a.m., and that is kind of an everyday, if it happens once in a great while, this is not a symptom of or an example of blood sugar issues. When it's happening every day, that's more of, hey, your body's needing some help and this is how it's asking for help. And that it's often due to cortisol surge, and that's either following a blood sugar dip or an elevated stress response. And so blood sugar and stress are very closely related in how they impact our hormones, but also how we perceive the symptoms of that. And we're moving into a stress series soon. I think that's in November or December. I need to look it up, but we're going to do a very detailed stress series again. And then at that point in the night, you're typically shifting from deep sleep into lighter REM. Again, more of a focus in deep sleep than more of a focus in REM. And our brain's just more easily awakened. And then the easiest thing to do is assess our nutrition and our stress balance. And sometimes, and this happens pretty often with my clients, is we address their blood sugar regulation and they automatically feel less stressed, and then they're automatically sleeping better. And then for some clients, if their blood sugar regulation, they're getting symptoms of blood sugar regulation, issues, but they also have really high stress. And then I look at what they're eating in their daily meals, and that some of that can help me break down the difference between if we need to focus on blood sugar or stress. Um, but both of those, you address one, the other one's going to follow, and then your sleep will always improve. So it's a really cool way where you don't have to focus on sleep aggressively to have these benefits by making bigger changes in other parts of our life. If you want to focus on sleep aggressively, that's great. And I'm going to give you the tools for that. And then I love practical applications so much. So you can get out your pen and paper. If you haven't been taking notes, uh, we want to create a sleep schedule. So I'm going to give some very basic examples. You are different. Your wake times are different. So assess from there and then see if you have any questions. I can break this down with you on the side. But the ideal sleep cycle, that's a hair, probably should need some water. Recorded videos are weird. I monologue the whole time. So the ideal sleep cycle, they say 7 to 9 hours. We're going to say 7.5 because of these 90-minute cycles to 9 hours. So that gives you a full 5 to 6 90-minute cycles, depending on what your body needs. That's different. But it's always great to start with that 7.5 as a bare minimum. Give yourself a couple weeks. And I promise you, like, we're going to go over a couple examples that you can do to make changes. You have to give it time. One day is not enough. Even a week is not enough. It takes time for our hormones to adapt and adjust. And there's some things that will give you a quicker response. But to truly impact sleep long term, if you've been building up some of that sleep debt, you got to give your body time. And if it's frustrating, I get it. Let's talk about it. I'd love to. I love talking with people about everything related to health. And so for an example, this is just a very basic example. If you want to wake up every day between at 6:30 a.m., you need to set your wake time, make a hard limit on that, no snooze, get the heck out of bed, but set your wake time, and that is a hard line no matter what. This is really important because as you are adjusting your sleep schedule and you are adjusting to those changes, you're not going to go to sleep really quickly right away. It's going to be a struggle, specifically, especially if you haven't done it before. It's going to be a struggle. But if you keep that 6:30 wake time and you say, come hell or high water, I'm not letting this change, and you keep that and hold it for 2 to 3 weeks, your body automatically adjusts and adapts to that. And 3 weeks is really a really long time. And that is if you have a lot of issues. Most people don't have a lot of issues like what I'm thinking about and referencing. But my whole point in this is whatever your wake time is, set it, make a hard line, and come hell or high water, don't let yourself break from that. And then so back calculate however many full sleep cycles you want. Back calculate, maybe that's 9:30 or 10 p.m. Depends on what you're going for. And again, a minimum of a 7.5. And then go to bed, waking up at consistent times, train your body to start deep sleep. There's a few methods that sleep doctors will talk about, and I've heard it on podcasts and I've read it on studies, and I've read it in books, where that hard wake time and the very aggressive approach to that is to set your hard wake time of 6:30 a.m. and give yourself maybe 2 or 3 of those 90-minute sleep cycles for a week, and then don't nap during the day. I mean, this is a really aggressive schedule, and if you're doing that, or you think about that's might a good idea for you, let's seriously talk about this, because it's a very aggressive sleep schedule and impacting your sleep if you're already deficient in positive sleep, and impacting it more depending on what's going on with your life. This may not be helpful for you. And I prefer the less aggressive option of the minimum of 7.5 hours. But there are studies that show where you have that 2 to 3 sleep cycles, and you start that out, you hold that for a week, and then you add one more. And that gives your body the ability to adapt to that. But again, that's really aggressive. Most people don't need that. Start with that 7.5 hours. Always start with your fixed wake time. And then let's talk about sleep cycle optimization. So we talked about red light, and we talked about red light last week. We talked about blue light. There we go. And how that impacts melatonin and the release of those hormones. We could go the most aggressive, the most holistic option and say that when the sun sets, I'm going to be candles only. And for some people, that might work. Most people, that is completely unrealistic. And trying to do something unrealistic like that adds a crazy amount of stress, which we're already too stressed to begin with. Then you feel like you're failing. It's the same thing with fad diets. When you go big and extreme um, right away or at all, it's going to set you up for failure, and you're going to feel like a failure when it wasn't you and it wasn't the plan or even the idea. It was, this is ridiculous and crazy for you. So there's the extremes. There is bright lights and blue lights on your phone, in your face, TV as well, right up until bedtime. And then there is, as soon as the sun sets, I'm a candles only girl. These are two extremes. Let's find a middle ground. A middle ground can be something like a bare minimum of an hour or 2 hours before bedtime. We have some of the lower lighting. We're not having caffeine and alcohol. We're not having heavy meals. But the biggest part is we're not having those blue lights right in our face. So we're not working up until bedtime. We're not scrolling, laying in bed, thinking that we're going to go to sleep right away. Just making that one change. Let's say we choose 30 minutes, because again, I want to build you up. 30 minutes. Your goal is 2 hours. And you say 30 minutes before bed, I'm not going to have screens. I'm going to have lamps, lower, dimmer lighting, not those big overhead angry lights. And then I'm going to do a gentle stretching routine or journaling. And that's all you do. You're going to see benefits 100%. And I'd love for someone to do that one change for 2 weeks and tell me they don't see any benefits, because it's not going to happen. Very confident in that. So an average recommendation is 1 to 2 hours before bed. We're dimming the lights. We're getting the blue light out of our face, and we're doing something that's calming. I really love having a gentle stretch. I love reading so much, although sometimes if it's a good book, you don't want to go to bed. But I love a good book. I love a gentle stretch, an evening mocktail, and/or journaling. Journaling isn't one of my favorite options for calming down and going to bed. It's a great reflective tool, but I like something where it still feels like my brain is turning off, because oftentimes our brains are on too much. We have too much going on. And so we need things that help us turn our brain off. And that's why I really like super, super simple, boring book, stretching, or the evening mocktail. And that can have like adrenal support and magnesium and potassium and calcium and some other minerals. And then, or it can be, or adding something like magnesium beverage with GABA. And then again, if you want some recommendations, I don't have codes for these. They're just good products. Let me know and I'll send it to you. So that's an option for optimizing your sleep. And then I see the time. Keeping your room cooler, 65 to 68 degrees. Sometimes having just that overhead fan on can help. And then a pretty common recommendation that people say is keeping kids and pets out of your bed. I don't know any parent who has a young child who never has those kids in their bed. So even if you're trying not to do co-sleeping, there's still nights when you need that. So it's finding what works for you and what works for your family. Sometimes it's having that barrier, and sometimes it is having the kid in the bed because you sleep better with your kid there. It's finding what works for you. And then, so that's just my point with all of that. Sometimes this advice can be, or the things that we read online, which is why I wanted to address this specific one. We read the things online and like, oh, that's supposed to be helpful, but for how your family dynamic is, it actually would cause more problems. And so it's just having the discernment to know what is some good options for you in your life. And then other things that I really like is a weighted blanket, consistent white noise machine. You can have white noise or gentle music or the fan going, or I really love the dryer sounds on the white noise machines. It's so soothing. And then I really like weighted blankets. And when you look up if you're going to buy a weighted blanket, having one that is I think it's 10% of your body weight is the goal with that. They can be kind of heavy depending on how much you weigh. Um, I don't think I'm crazy heavy, and it's still like you pick up that blanket and it's heavy. And then upon waking, so we've talked about how to impact sleep. We've talked about the um, 90-minute cycles. We've talked about that hard wake time. So, what do we do when we have that hard wake time? Very first thing, don't hit snooze. And if you have to, have your alarm source on the other side of the room or away from your bed. So you have to get up to turn it off. It's annoying. It really is. I get it. But if you want to make changes and you want to feel better, you cannot keep hitting that snooze, and you have to hold that hard wake time no matter what. So we get up. What do? We have that hard wake time. The alarm goes off. We crawl out of bed. We're super mad because Bree told us to do that. We turn it off. We don't hit snooze. We turn it off, and then what do? We get bright light. So last week or last call, you can go back and look it up. We talked about the building that sleep pressure, cortisol, and the melatonin, the role in that. And the very first thing that happens with our eyes and our brain is getting that bright light exposure. It starts resetting all of those hormones. Um, so you can, of course, turn on the bright lights. Hopefully the sun has risen, but we're getting into winter, which is kind of not the favorite option when looking at where we live according to the equator and then all the things. So turning the light on, that can be helpful. If you have some money to spend, red light therapy is another great way to do that. It gets those red waves in the eyeballs, starts that process of our hormones. Building up the sleep pressure and melatonin, the hormones, that starts the minute you wake up. And so that first thing of that bright light, red light, sunlight, whatever, getting through our eyes, starting that chemical process in our brain, that's going to help you out. So upon waking, hard wake time, some type of bright light. And then I talk about it a lot. I do have a code if you want it, cool. If you want to spend the money without the discount, cool. There are a couple good companies. There is Loom and Joovv. They're about the same price. I have Joovv. I have a code for Joovv. I have the small one. I upgraded this past year to a larger panel, and that was not cheap, but it's very helpful. It's helpful for that red light. It's helpful for your mood, blood sugar regulation, your skin health. My stretch marks from pregnancy, they're almost completely colorless now from using that red light. I love it. But move on. We don't have to talk about that forever. And then, so a couple things that we can do. You can have the hard wake time, and or you can have a sleep tracker. So if you're taking notes, create a log. What's your wake time? Other side of the log, what's the bedtime? And then in the middle or on the sides, you can list how many times you woke up. You can list your energy levels in the morning. Always have the same grading scale, 1 to 5. And then if you have dreams, you can say yes or no. You can write them down and recall them. That might be a great way to have a non-screen time way to wake up in the morning, which also impacts stress. Depends on what you want. Keep it simple if you need to. And then the rested sleep score. So energy levels and rested sleep score are different, and learning how to read our body starts with knowing that they're different. And I encourage you to set the hard wake time, set your goal sleep time, and then pick one of these 3 optimization skills to focus on for the next 3 nights. So you can do a consistent bedtime. You can do no screens an hour before bed, 30 minutes, 2 hours, 1 hour is a good-ish start point for a lot of people. And then caffeine cut off before noon, and just see how you feel. So pick one of those. You'll track and take note of how your energy and mood shifts. Most of the time, fat loss is not that immediate. It still takes time for our body and hormones to adjust. So we're looking at energy and mood. It's the fastest way to assess what's happening and to know whether something is working or not working for us. But one of those three options, consistent bedtime, no screens an hour before bed, and or caffeine cut off before noon, each of those will impact the quality and quantity of your sleep. And you can do all three or you can do one. I really don't like people starting with big crazy changes. So preferably choose one. If you've already done one, add to the other one. So that was the application. I wanted to talk about a couple of things related to fat loss and detoxing. So I have talked a few times about our brain detoxing and fat loss happening in our sleep. And we're like, okay, cool. What does that mean? What happens? Why are we saying this? So the brain detox, what happens is during our deep sleep, this is the slow way to sleep. This is the sleep that happens in a higher ratio before midnight. Stage 3, all the same thing, deep sleep. This is our brain's cleanup crew, and it's called the glymphatic system, and it becomes highly active. So the cerebral spinal fluid, yes, glymphatic and cerebral spinal fluid, we're putting big words out here. It washes through our brain, it helps clean out some of that metabolic waste. And this is including like beta amyloid or tau proteins, and these are both linked to Alzheimer's. And so oftentimes, Alzheimer's, people are calling it like the type 3 diabetes because there's a blood sugar focus. Blood sugar impacts sleep, by the way. I haven't said that yet. I haven't said it 10,000 times. But our sleep is still really important. And I mean, we all know a couple days of no sleep, our memory's garbage. You look at that long term, that could be unhelpful. That's probably the best way to do it. It can be unhelpful. So that's what happens. The cerebral spinal fluid comes through, washes out some of those toxic metabolic waste things, toxic to our brain, and it helps get rid of that from our brain. And then the reason I'm saying this during deep sleep, because it happens through all of our sleep, but it happens 10 times, the detox process is 10 times more effective during deep sleep than in our waking hours. So our brain is always doing this, but it's at a higher rate and it's more effective. And so this is why I really want to go through what's happening, because people can have false perceptions of what's going on. So if I say brain detox is happening during our sleep, you could think that means their brain detox is not happening at all when I'm not asleep. And I talk about stress a lot, but the stress of that impacts what's happening in our body from our metabolic system and our adrenal and our thyroid and our gut health. So I always wanting to educate everyone that's listening to these videos, or educate you to know that like what's happening so we can do the best way to support it and focus on not being as stressed, because sometimes we don't think we're stressed and then it's increasing it. So anyhow, whatever. And then deep sleep's also where our neurological connections are pruned. This allows the brain to consolidate memory, reset for the next day. So not having enough deep sleep allows for some of that buildup of some of those metabolic waste. And then we will feel and notice some brain fog, memory, slower cognition. It's hard to quantify that, but neuroinflammation, inflammation. And then chronic deep sleep deprivation actively reduces glymphatic efficiency long term. And it's the same thing with sleep pressure or sleep debt, that build up over a period of time. That's kind of part of what we're talking about when we're talking about building that sleep debt. So our brain detoxes in deep sleep, not really in REM. It does happen throughout the day, but 10 times more effective, more active at that time. And then alcohol, stress, or late night meals, all of those suppresses deep sleep. And that's a reason why we feel that mental fog the next day. And then one of the reasons that a lot of people even care about what I'm talking about is fat loss. So you might not care about stress. You might not care about long-term health, but you just desperately want to have some fat loss. And if that's what you care about, this helps that too. So what happens? Our fat loss is lost, or fat can be lost through respiration. What is respiration? That is the breathing out of CO2 and water vapors. Yeah, that's all it is. It's a fancy word for it. But this happens through all sleep stages, but it's most efficient during deep sleep. So we've talked about two things: the detoxification of our brains and fat loss during sleep. And it happens at a higher ratio during deep sleep. And our during the nightly cycle, the higher ratio of deep sleep that is obtained is the hours before midnight. So hopefully all of this is helping you understand that going to bed at midnight is not helping with the goals that you have. 9:30-ish might seem a little bit early, but that's going to help you reach the goals that you have. So how it works, our fat breakdown. We have fat breaks down to carbon dioxide and water, and that is part of that like respiration, getting it out of our body. Most of the CO2 is exhaled, and I love saying it because people are like, what, that's real? We literally breathe out fat while we're sleeping. So if all you care about is losing weight, impacting your sleep and improving your sleep is going to help this process. And then our deep sleep supports this with lowered cortisol, improved insulin sensitivity. It's shifting our metabolism from fat oxidation from glucose burning. Sorry, we've been talking for a while. And then our hormones that are involved. So there's the growth hormone. Again, that's released during deep sleep. It promotes fat breakdown and tissue repair. Growth hormone is awesome for our bodies. Cortisol drops during the early night in deep sleep, allows for MAP mobilization. So we go back to stress again, really annoying, going back to it again. That's what's happening. And then leptin. So leptin, that's that full signal that rises. Ghrelin is the hunger signal. I'm hungry. That's kind of stabilizing that metabolism and helping with those next day cravings. And so when I am addressing blood sugar regulation with someone, their sleep improves. If I address sleep, their blood sugar regulation improves. Everything is connected. Make sure I went through all of those. Yeah, that was my notes. Okay, so this was longer than I anticipated, which is fine, whatever. So we talked about the sleep cycles, the stages of the sleep cycles, what's important to get deep sleep early. The REM sleep is a little bit later. You want that divided up, but you're still getting it through every phase of the night. It's not just sleeping for a long time, it's that rhythm of that deeper, because REM and deep are deeper, of that deeper sleep access. And then that we cycle through it. So if you're waking up through the night, doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. It's sometimes the type of waking or when you're waking changes what's going on. So for this week's goal, we're going to stabilize your bedtime and wake time, and you're going to remove one disruptor. So remember, the disruptor is consistent bedtime, no screens, or caffeine. And then this consistent rhythm will help you reach that more restorative deep and REM sleep. And then I will upload the next video in a day or two. And on Monday night, we're going to go through how peptides impact sleep. And if you have any questions or concerns, or you want to talk about how we can build a tracker that fits your needs better or troubleshoot, I'd love to help. Let me know and let's talk.